Hi, I'm Mark Upton, a coaching consultant with Sports Relations, and this is a recording of a presentation I gave just recently, a couple of weeks ago, mid-February 2013, to a group of Level 2 Australian rules coaches in Adelaide. Fantastic group from what I saw, and really enjoyed the session. Hopefully they got a bit out of it. And I promised them that I'd do a recording for them if they ever need it for their reference, and also for anyone else who's interested and maybe listening and watching right now. So we'll get into the things we covered. It was quite a wide range of things. We didn't quite get through it all, but we sort of broke it up. I guess it was really 4 mini presentations within the scope of the whole. So the first thing we looked at, and we'll look at today closely, is coach learning. So we obviously as coaches focus a lot on how our players learn and developing their skills and abilities. But this first section will be a bit about how coaches can actually learn the craft of coaching, and a few things and ways to go about that learning and development journey. Then we moved on and talked about learning from the player's perspective, so the more traditional thing we'd think about when we talk about learning and skill acquisition, and really went through a case study of an article, a soccer article there, which we'll get into. The third part and piece was about evaluating performance and the different ways to do that. And then the last part was a little bit about technology and some things to think about when you're a coach at all levels, when you're thinking of incorporating technology into your coaching process. So it wasn't a session that was designed to be a set recipe of here's 4 ways exactly to design a training activity, or here's the 5 most important statistics you should keep to evaluate a game. It was more about trying to get everyone there to get the cogs turning over, have them thinking, want them to come in with an open mind, and I deliberately used examples that weren't from Australian rules footy, because often you can get stuck in traditional thinking of that sport. So I tried to use examples from other sports, other industry even, to get the cogs turning, and as I said at the start, hopefully to take away just one thing that they can use in their coaching. So from a coach learning perspective, what did we go through? We looked at one way to go about coaching, and this was ARCS. This is actually from an Australian movie, and this scene was quite a amusing one about a post-match review from ARCS, the coach here, and we just wondered how he would go with some of the things that we were going to go through. And that included asking why, and this the starting point of this was from a video by Simon Sinek, the man pictured here. And I'll put a link to the video along in this blog post. And Simon does a whole presentation talking about the concept of why. People want to understand why you do something. They're not as interested in the what and the how, whilst they're important, but they latch onto the why. And for leaders, and so coaches included obviously in amongst the leadership group, that question of why you're doing what you do becomes really important. And so we got them to do the activity, and you might want to think about it yourself now and jot down a few points about why do you coach, and what your motivations are and your values and beliefs are for why you actually are a coach. And then the second part of that, we skipped the how and went to the what as the second activity, and asked the question, what is coaching? But we weren't after a fluffy definition of 1 or 2 sentences to describe coaching. We actually wanted them to list the specific tasks and decisions that they undertake or have to make on a day-to-day basis, week to week as a coach. It may be in season and in pre-season, typical weeks. What are the tasks and decisions you actually have to do as a coach? So you're actually auditing as a coach, what are the skills you need? So maybe if you want to have a go at that now as well, pause the video and list some of those things down. And then the third activity was related to the how. So referring back to this list of the tasks and decisions you have to do and make as a coach, is then for each one of those, think about how do you actually learn to do that the way you do. And the typical type responses came up from experience as a player and how you were coached, from learning on the job and reflecting on how you went about a certain task or decision as a coach, reflecting and learning from those experiences, from formal education and workshops like the Level 2 course itself, from talking, sharing, networking, collaborating with other coaches, discussion. All these things came up in terms of how it was learnt. One person mentioned using data or an evidence-based approach, and I think that's one that's really important, is there any evidence or science or theory in any of those that you need to consider and understand, and then try to think, now, does that apply to my context? Or, okay, here's an evidence-based way that says this is best practice. How does that fit into the context of my coaching? So they went through those 3 activities, and I touched on it just then briefly. And we just spoke about the value of self-reflecting constantly as a coach. And this was a tweet from John Stoskowski, and John's done a lot of research and work looking at coach development and also the ways coaches learn and things like communities of practice amongst coaches. And he's talking there about reflection and critical thinking. And he doesn't mean critical thinking in terms of being negative, but actually trying to take an objective view and an honest critique of how you've gone about certain tasks and decisions as a coach, so that you can genuinely learn from them, and if you need to change them, then you can go about it differently another time. Or if it's worked really well, well, you can lock that away in the memory bank, and you know that that is an effective method to go about certain tasks or decisions. So self-reflection in general as a constant tool is really important for your coaching development, and all the best coaches tend to exhibit that trait either from the start of their career or they've picked that up along the way. And as I mentioned, it's all this is obviously has to be done within the context of this coach's specific environment, as Chris Cushion, another UK coach researcher, vastly experienced, done a lot of great work in that area. He points that out here, and this was a snapshot of the attendees at the course, the breakdown of the various levels they coached at, and including some attendees who are actually still playing the game and interested in getting to coaching. And the point was, all those different groups are going to have different contexts and circumstances that they have to apply appropriate behaviours to, or evidence-based approaches to suit that context. And summed up a lot of that by talking about an elite level case study of Stuart Lancaster and the English rugby union team, who's going along quite well at the moment, and just pulled out, this was a recent article on Simon, and some of the key quotes and thoughts highlighted in blue there that just reinforce some of the points we talked about in terms of believing that a culture of self-improvement is just as important for coaches as their players, having an open mind, being able to reflect, sharing ideas with other coaches and from other sports. And the one in red there is sometimes a limiter to coaches developing and coaches learning, because we talked about sometimes you're given the role as a coach or title as a coach. You might have spent 10, 15 years as a player, and then when you're given that title, suddenly there's a perception or an expectation perhaps that you're expected to know it all, and sometimes coaches can feel that expectation and perception and think they have to live up to it, and they're not as open to learning. So that may or may not be the case in your coaching situation, but something to be aware of, and just think, how do I handle that? Or if that is the case, am I still as open to learning as I should be? So that was a case study on Stuart. And we sort of round off the coach development section by looking at the value of social media. Obviously, if you're watching this video on this blog post or embedded in this blog post, there's probably a fair chance that maybe you've already discovered that there is value in social media for your coaching development. For the guys there, I think it probably is a bit of a stretch for some at the moment. They're still probably coming to terms with how it could help them. And we spoke about how social media is just an evolution of communication methods. Like 15, 20 years ago, perhaps email was not used by many, and how does it work and what's it all about and where's the value? Obviously these days it's just part of pretty much everybody's everyday life. And we spoke about social media being the same. So it's just a matter of working out as a coach how you can get some value out of that. And I mentioned the fact that I find Twitter, YouTube and LinkedIn to be really valuable sources of information, discussion and collaboration with other coaches or experts in that coaching field. And also got Stuart Lyric to put together this little...
Hi, I'm Stuart Lyric, a specialist kicking coach working in rugby league and rugby union. For me, using social media is a critical part of my everyday life, I guess, certainly my coaching process. When I first started using Twitter about 12 months ago, initially for me it was for acquiring knowledge through certain links that were posted to the internet in the areas of coach education, sports science, and I guess anything else that was specific to what I do for a profession. What happened, I suppose, after a period of months, given that I work in a specialist area of coaching and skill acquisition, that I had other coaches in my line of work, certainly in the rugby codes, that were interested to know a little bit more about what I do. So it turned into certainly a sharing platform for me. To this day, I now use LinkedIn, which is more of a professional sharing format for your profile, like a resume, and Twitter itself. But for me, it's certainly more than just a way in which you can acquire knowledge. It's a fantastic medium for being able to share and interact with other like-minded coaches.
So that was some of Stuart's thoughts that I got to share with the other guys. You can find Stuart on Twitter at Kick Coaching, just as, again, another real-life case study, if you like, of a guy that's experienced social media and explaining some of the value that he's got out of it. So that was it from a coach learning and coach development point of view.